How does it feel to be inducted into the Oregon Music Hall of Fame?
It feels amazing. Music is not. It's one of those things where you don't always have. There's no employee of the month usually. If you play you can play a venue for years, and you'll see photos on the wall of like all the people that have also played there for years, and you're not up there sometimes, and you're like, how many times have I played this place? What does it take to get my photo up on the wall? Anyway, it's the applause fades, and there are very few things that sort of mark time like this, and say, we've seen the work you've done over decades and acknowledge you for it, and it means the world.
So you got the usual call from Terry.
Yeah.
What did Terry tell you, and how did you react to it?
Terry said I was being inducted, and he was, I was thrilled, and he was delighted about it too. And a funny thing, my band played here last year as the headliner for the Hall of Fame event, because our keyboard player, Jenny Conley, who also plays in the Decemberists, was being inducted individually as a musician. And so they wanted a band to represent her. And so we played my songs, but she chose the set list. And then we snuck this up on her, where at the end, there was a song at the end where we often kind of medley songs and have fun with it. And we picked 5 songs from Jenny's whole career and all the most important bands she had been in since her college days, in the band Colobo, the Decemberists, Black Prairie, all these bands, and we did a little bit of every song and sort of quizzed her on her life. So we played here last year, anyway, so now it's my turn.
Your body of work that led you to this point. Mm-hmm. First of all, tell me a little bit about it, mm-hmm. and tell me, why do you think it got you to the Oregon Music Hall of Fame?
Well, I started out, I was living in Olympia, Washington in the early 90s, and kind of in the punk rock stew of Olympia. I was always really interested in folk music as well as punk, and so those were the things that I was focused on, and I started to make folk punk music, and it was all really political. I was playing a lot through the environmental movement, and kind of through the environmental movement, I found myself with a music career. There were environmental groups at colleges all over the country, and I put out a cassette that I would sell and play at these conferences for them, and then I would get booked and be paid pretty well to play at colleges and kind of talk about environmental issues. And then I could also go and play the rock clubs while I was on tour. And that was sort of how it started. I got really interested in traditional Irish and Scottish music, and I was signed to a folk music label called Appleseed Recordings out of Philadelphia. I had moved to Portland at this point, and in the late 90s. And Appleseed, the first thing they did was put me on a tribute to Pete Seeger. That was like a double album. Some of the songs on it were Grammy nominated. It was like Bruce Springsteen and Jackson Browne and all these people. And there were over 80 songs recorded for the tribute. And when the label head, Jim Musselman, called me and asked me about it, he said, we're going to give you a budget to record songs. Just so you know, you might not be on the record. We're asking a lot of people to do this. And I got a fax one day that was a letter from Pete Seeger to the label critiquing the 80 songs he had been sent. And there's a paragraph on it saying, I wasn't going to talk about any of the individual songs, but Casey Neill's songs are amazing, and who is this person? And I'm just looking at this fax like, whoa, And so then he encouraged the label to sign me to a full deal, and so then I started touring in sort of more. My original touring was very, very grassroots, and this was suddenly, okay, now I'm in music venues and on stages with lights that hang, and started to do that, and I put a band together, a flute player and mandolin player, and we spent years on tour all over the US, all over the UK, but we were always based in Portland. Oregon was always our home. And then I moved to New York for a few years, and then came back and put together a rock band. And that was the Norway Rats with Jenny and Chet Leister on guitar, Jesse Emerson on bass. There's been a lot of other musicians in it, but those core members, mostly drummers, have rotated in and out. They all end up exploding.
What do you mean by that?
Spinal Tap. The drummers, they spontaneously combust. And we worked with all these amazing drummers, John Moen and Scott McPherson, Joe Menges, all these great people, but and Rachel Plumberg. Was very entrenched in that music community that kind of went back to the 90s, all sort of people my age, Gen X, who were we all kind of came up together in different bands, and then the Norway Rats, I was able to draw on those years of history, and then we've made 4 records across the following 15 years, and been playing consistently in Portland and also touring around the country more, and so it's, at times I felt like I was on the road enough that I wasn't entrenched in Portland as much as I thought, other people like, our friend Louis Longmire, who you've probably interviewed, who Louis will play 200, 250 shows a year, and tons of them will be all over the country or in Europe or something, but you move to Portland, you're around music, you always know Louis because he's in it, Sometimes I felt like, I'm not, I play 2 or 3 shows in Portland a year or something like that, and we try and make them a big thing, but I think, the cumulative effect of all this, and also that I sort of came up as a singer-songwriter, worked in punk rock music circles, and then played traditional Irish music, and then played in a rock band, and it's sort of, there have been a lot of sort of genre things. It's all Western song form, and I'm not playing ragas or classical pieces, but there's been a lot of genre moving around and evolution to it, and I think that's been recognized too, that I've sort of been evolving it the whole time. So.
Oregon Music Hall of Fame, very involved in music education, and that's what this event is about tonight, raising money and recognizing great artists. What are your thoughts about music education? I mean, it sounds like you were self-taught more than having people teach you, or?
I started taking lessons when I was about 10, and had guitar lessons, and I had a sort of foundation with theory and things like that around it, but then I sort of didn't take it seriously after a while and drifted away from it in my late teens, but I very much, it gave me the fundamentals of theory, and it also gave me the mechanics of just your fingers. And I try and play piano now, and it's like learning a language when you get older. Your brain just isn't as elastic to take this stuff in. So I'm glad I started when I was young enough to do it. And music education, of course, is vital. It's being cut all over the place across the country, and it just needs to, as much as it can be in schools, and if we need to have outside fundraising for it, then we can do that. And I think the Oregon Music Hall of Fame and the work that this is, this is an event to acknowledge musicians who've done the work that we've all been doing over all these years. And I love how it's across genres and which speaks to Portland too, that we're not a genre town. Austin, Texas has a couple of genres it does, and it does them really well. Nashville obviously has one genre it does, and does it really well. We have metal bands tonight it being acknowledged tonight. We have hip hop acts that are in the Hall of Fame. All these things, and Portland's been amazing for that. And that's and all of it has this kind of progressive spirit to it. There's a thread even outside of the genres where there's just this way that people think here about just giving back to our communities, and music is part of the fabric of life. It's not something that you just go and see on people who are out of touch or out of reach on stage. It's people that are, as musicians, we are involved in our communities. We do benefits for all kinds of things all the time. That's really important. Things like the Jeremy Wilson Foundation, when we have musicians in health crisis, we've created systems to help them. And the Oregon Music Hall of Fame doing that for our kids is just, it's so us. It's just, of course, that's what's going to happen. It's part of that giving back and part of that progressive spirit that is just infused into the music communities here.